Welcome again to the Daily Life Connection video as we go and explore 2 Samuel chapter 9, story of Mephibosheth, and how it reveals the heart of God. Well, I hope you're still hanging in here with me on this one, because I'm just enjoying myself so much walking through this story. And today we're going to take a look at the truth that Mephibosheth received all of these good things because of David's faithfulness to the covenant. It wasn't Mephibosheth's faithfulness or faith that got him a place at the king's table and had all of his property restored to him. And David goes on and says, and all these servants, they're going to work your land for you. Your land has been given back to you, and you're not even going to have to work the crops. You're just going to benefit from them. He received those blessings because of David's faithfulness. You see, David said, he said to his servants, he said, is there anyone left from Saul's family that I can bless? Because I made a covenant with Jonathan, and I want to be faithful to that covenant. I'm going to be faithful to that covenant. David's faithfulness ended up bringing Mephibosheth into a place of great blessing. And friends, that is Jesus. That is Jesus. In the New Testament, there are several places where it says we have been made righteous through his faithfulness. It's through his faithfulness. We can come boldly to his throne, his table, his palace, because of the faithfulness of Christ. David's faithfulness to his covenant with Jonathan is a great picture of Jesus' faithfulness to his covenant with the Father to bring us blessing, to restore us, to bring us in and to treat us as his adopted sons and daughters. That's the faithfulness of Christ, not because of ours, but because of his. Oh, let me read it to you. I'm going to take a second here to find this, I think, but I want to read it to you. Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 12. Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 12. And we'll get there eventually. Here it is. We have come to God in boldness and confidence through the faithfulness of Christ. This translation says, we have access to God with boldness and confidence because of the faithfulness of Jesus. We get into the king's palace because of his faithfulness, not ours. Now, what's the point that I'm making here? Is simply this. If we think the only way we can experience God's blessings is if we have the right kind of faith and enough of the faith and consistent faith, if we believe it's up to our faith, that, God is kind of saying like, well, I'm going to watch and see if you've got enough faith, the right kind of faith. I'm going to see if you're faithful enough. And if you are, then I'll let you in into my table and bless you with all these things. That's a place of despair, isn't it? That's a place of despair. Jesus said it. He said in Matthew 5 and 20, unless your righteousness, unless your right living surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, the ones who are very best at it, if you're not better than them, you can't get into the kingdom of heaven. Well, then there's no hope. If it's up to my faith and my faithfulness, there's no hope. But if it's up to Jesus' faithfulness, he is completely faithful. He got it all right. And it's because of his faithfulness that we have access to the blessings of God. It's because of David's faithfulness that Mephibosheth had access to the palace and to the king's table. I just want to strongly emphasize that again today. Your right to be at God's table, to experience his restoration, his blessings, his favor, his goodness, his grace. It's all because of Jesus' faithfulness. It's his faithfulness and what he went through. He came. He was born of Mary. He lived on earth. He died. He rose again. He ascended back to the Father. He took us all into himself and adopted us as his children. He was faithful beginning to end, and it's his faithfulness that guarantees you and I have a place at the king's table, and we don't have to do anything to earn it. You see, that's the gospel. That's the good news. The good news is not if you have enough faith, then you could get in. It's not that you show up at the palace and if you pass the exam, you get in. It's simply you show up at the palace and he's going to embrace you and welcome you in. Just showing up is all we have to do. All Mephibosheth had to do was show up at the palace. And he had his property returned, servants working for him, the king's table and the king's food totally accessible and all the time, and a place to live in the king's palace. All of that just because he showed up. Prodigal son. All of that came back to him. Robe, ring, sandals, banquet. Just because he showed up. That's the good news. And that's what Jesus' faithfulness has done. You see, under the old covenant, God said, if you obey all these things, then you will experience my blessings. But no one has ever could. So Jesus said, I'll go, I'll do it, I'll be the faithful one. And that will qualify everybody for the blessings because I'm going to embrace them all in myself. His faithfulness qualifies you today for every blessing. Don't miss out on it because you're putting yourself down and you're feeling unworthy. Trust his faithfulness is enough. And just show up at the king's door. Will you do that today? And we'll talk again tomorrow.